Hi there. Today's story is an honest and ironic look at the side of the Middle Ages that you rarely hear about in textbooks. You'll see what the real life of a mistress of concubines was like, waking up at dawn to screams and the creaking of wooden floors, sharing meager food with her charges, fighting for every bucket of murky water, mending clothes with thread, hair, or even a horse's mane, and teaching the girls how to survive in a world where danger lurks around every corner. But before you get comfortable, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I'm really curious to see who has joined us today. Now get cozy. We're about to begin. You awaken to the same sound every morning. There is nothing poetic about the way day arrives here. No gentle bird song, no golden rays of hope creeping across your face. Instead, you are greeted by the distant, yet always intrusive, shriek of someone's misfortune. Today, it is the stable boy's voice, shrill with either fear or pain. By now, you no longer bother guessing which. Your back aches. It is not the romantic, delicate ache of a tragic heroine, but the deep, grinding misery of bones pressing against straw through a threadbare mattress, night after night, winter after winter. The room you call your own is less a chamber and more a dark alcove between the kitchens and the girls' quarters, with only a ragged cloth for a door and a single cracked clay jug for your private needs. You do not linger. That luxury is for those with power or beauty, and you possess neither, at least not in the currency that counts. As the appointed mistress of young concubines, your duty is perpetual vigilance. You are responsible for the waking, the washing, the learning, the survival. There is no time for the luxury of late rising, not when you must set the example. You do not have a clock. Time is measured in the length of shadow across the stone floor, in the coldness of your feet, and in the rhythm of chores shouted down corridors by women even older and more tired than yourself. This morning, like every morning, you wash your face with water so cold it bites, hauled from the yard well, if you are lucky, and there is any left after the servants' rush. Your hands are never clean. Under your nails is a stubborn layer of gray, ash from the kitchens, mud from the courtyard, blood from unknown origins. You have grown accustomed to the scent, sweat, mildew, the lingering iron note of sickness. You remember a time when you minded, when you scrubbed your hands until they bled and hid the cracks beneath your sleeves. You do not bother anymore. Already you hear movement in the adjoining room, the shuffling of feet, the nervous giggle of a girl who still dares hope, the muffled sob of another who knows better. You do not allow yourself to wonder which sound belongs to which girl. There are always new faces, new names. They pass through like the seasons, each believing, for a short time, that perhaps they will be the one to escape the fate set before them. You step outside, careful not to slip on the stones slick with last night's rain. The world beyond your alcove is a labyrinth of passageways, each filled with the sighs, groans, and silent pleas of the women who live and work here. You nod to the cook, whose eyes are already red rimmed from smoke and sorrow. You nod to the laundry maid, whose hands are raw and swollen from scrubbing filth from fine linens she will never wear. Your first task is the water, always the water. The well stands in the yard, a sagging, splintered thing, surrounded by mud and the ghosts of spilled secrets. This morning, as you approach, you see a line of women waiting. Some clutch buckets, others old wineskins. All are silent. The only sound is the steady creak of the winch, the splatter of water into pails, the sighs of exhaustion. You wait your turn. You listen to the women's muttered curses about last week's dead rat, about the growing sickness in the lower quarters, about the steward's new demands. You know not to speak unless spoken to. You know not to complain. Complaint is a luxury, and you cannot afford even that. When finally you reach the well, you lower your pail slowly, careful not to stir the dark water too much. It smells faintly of rot, a reminder that nothing here is ever truly clean. Still, you are grateful. Water is water. You hoist the heavy bucket, muscles burning. You make a mental note. The girls must drink sparingly. There will not be enough for everyone. Not today, not ever. By the time you return to your quarters, the girls are lined up, eyes wide with expectation or fear, faces still blotchy from sleep or tears. You look at them and see what the world refuses to see: hope already fading, childhood slipping away, replaced by the hardened mask of survival. You do not smile. Smiles are for the foolish or the cruel. Instead, you set down the water and begin the day's routine, your voice flat and practiced, as if reciting from a sacred, miserable text. Wash your faces, line up, quickly now. And so, with the taste of another's scream still lingering in the air, the day truly begins. You might think water is a simple thing, a birthright, a given, a substance so common that no one with sense would worry about it. You would be wrong. In this place, in this time, water is both weapon and currency. Every drop is measured, every bucket eyed with suspicion. Here, water is a luxury for the fortunate, and you are not among them. After the girls have splashed their faces with a meager handful each, you collect the dirty wash water yourself. You cannot afford to let any servant see the way it shimmers with grease and the faint film of human misery. The water is poured out carefully, just inside the herb garden. No one speaks of the garden's strange yield, its wilting roots and strangely bitter leaves. There are rumors, of course. There are always rumors, but no one listens to women's whispers unless they carry news of scandal. You know every source of water within a mile of these walls. The deep stone well, the stream just beyond the orchard, the rainwater barrel near the armory. Each comes with its own hazards. The well, the site of last week's drowned rat, is the most reliable. The stream is sometimes choked with refuse from the kitchens and the laundry, its banks a muddle of old shoes, broken tools, and secrets best forgotten. The rainwater barrel is usually empty, a casualty of too many desperate hands and too many dry seasons. When water is short, and it is always short, you make do. You have learned to scrape dew from stone windowsills at dawn, to wring moisture from boiled roots, to ration even the water for boiling porridge. The girls, of course, grumble at first. Their lips crack, their skin flakes, their eyes grow dull. You teach them that thirst is a teacher far less forgiving than you are. The process of making water safe is a story all its own. You are no alchemist, but necessity has made you clever. You gather wood chips and brush, watching jealously as kitchen servants hoard the choicest pieces. You bargain with the stable boys, trading whispered favors for bundles of hay. When you finally have enough to start a fire, you fill the pot, place it over the coals, and wait. Patience is mandatory. You crouch over the steaming pot, a vigilant sentry, because even the smallest slip means more than the loss of water. It means the spread of sickness, a round of fever, another burial at sunrise. You have seen girls fall ill, their bodies racked by cramps, their lips blue and swollen. You have whispered lies of reassurance while watching the rash creep across their skin. You have prayed, but not to any god. You pray for rain, for mercy, for the courage to keep doing what must be done. The boiled water, when it finally cools, is a thin comfort. Its taste is coppery, faintly bitter. The girls make faces, but you fix them with your sharpest glare, and they drink. They know the stories of the girl who refused and spent 3 days bent double in agony before she died, of the one who tried to sneak out for a drink from the stream and was found, swollen and silent, at dawn. Here, even water can kill you. You ration what you have left. Washing is done sparingly, clothes left crusted with sweat and mud. When someone, usually a newcomer, bold or foolish, complains, you let her try to find her own water for a day. It is a lesson that never needs repeating. Sometimes, in the rare years when the rains are generous, you catch the girls pressing their faces to the glassless windows, tongues out, hoping to catch a few cool drops. You let them have this tiny pleasure. Hope is in short supply. You dare not extinguish even its palest spark. You remember a time, perhaps long ago or perhaps imagined, when water was something to be wasted. You remember the sound of laughter in a bright courtyard, buckets overturned in childish games. That world is gone now, and you do not allow yourself to mourn it for long. You spend a part of each day worrying about tomorrow's water, whether the well will dry, whether sickness will spread, whether the steward will decide the concubines need less than their share. You hide your fears behind routines, behind the careful management of buckets and pots and hopeful eyes. You remind the girls that the world outside these walls is harsher still, that here, at least, they are not alone in their thirst. Still, you cannot help but resent the way the Lord's Son struts through the yard, boots spotless, flinging water at the dogs for sport. You watch the kitchen mistress pour gallons down the drain after washing vegetables for the feast. You see, you remember, and you teach your girls the oldest lesson of all. The world is not fair, and those who thirst quietly survive longest. At the end of the day, as you tip the last of the boiled water into battered cups, you watch the girls drink with careful practiced sips. You say nothing, but they know. They see it in your eyes, in the way you clutch the empty bucket to your chest, in the way your own lips remain dry. Water is a gift, a curse, a lesson that must be learned anew every morning. And tomorrow you will begin again, measuring out hope, one drop at a time. You might imagine that the table of a mistress, a teacher, a woman tasked with the formation of young courtesans, would groan with plenty. You would be mistaken. In your world, breakfast is not a moment of indulgence, but a daily reminder of want, routine, and resignation. You have become skilled at lowering expectations, both your own and those of the girls in your care. The day's first meal is prepared not in the grand kitchens, but at a side hearth, a place where the warmth is fleeting and the odors are permanent. There is always a cue for the good bowls, the ones without cracks, the ones that do not leak. You keep a favored bowl hidden for yourself, not because it makes the food taste better, but because it reminds you that some things can still be yours, if only in secret. Today's breakfast is, as always, a lumpen porridge. The grains are whatever was left in the bottom of a sack: oats, barley, sometimes a few stray weevils, if you are unlucky, which is often. The cook insists on boiling the porridge long enough to kill whatever lives in it, but not so long that the result can truly be called food. You stir in a scrap of salt, a few bruised herbs, and pretend not to notice the color. You eat sitting on a wooden bench, one leg shorter than the others, so that your every movement becomes a balancing act. The girls gather around you, bowls in hand, waiting for permission to begin. Hunger has trained them better than you ever could. You glance at the bread, a gray, dense loaf, the top mottled with a map of blue-green mold. You scrape the worst off with your knife, hiding the crumbs in your palm, then slice with a practiced hand. Each girl gets a portion no bigger than a child's fist. There are lessons here, too. You teach the girls to eat slowly, to chew every bite as if it were their last. Sometimes, for some of them, it is. You remind them that hunger sharpens the senses and that satiety is for the powerful, not for those who must serve. The younger ones are tempted to gag at the taste of sour bread or the glutinous, sticky mass of porridge. You fix them with your driest stare, and they learn quickly to swallow complaints along with the food. There is always one girl, every morning, who tries to barter for more, offering a trinket, a compliment, the promise of silence or obedience. You refuse her gently, then firmly, and finally with the full weight of your authority. Fairness here is a fiction. Rations are fixed, and breaking the routine for one would mean breaking it for all. You explain this with weary patience. Sometimes you even believe it yourself. You remember stories from your own childhood of feasts, of bright mornings, of stolen apples and honey. You know those memories are half truths, dressed up by longing and loss. You push them away, focusing instead on the here and now, on the scrape of bowl against wood, on the silence of girls eating what little there is, on the dull ache that settles in your stomach even before you finish your share. The porridge is filling, if nothing else. It sits heavy in the gut, a shield against the day's labors. Sometimes a stone or a splinter finds its way in, a sharp reminder to be careful, to pay attention, to never grow complacent. You inspect each bowl as you collect them afterward, making sure nothing precious has been hidden away for later. Food hoarding is an act of desperation, and you understand it all too well. Breakfast is also a time for inspection. You note which girls eat with appetite and which push their food around the bowl. The ones who refuse to eat may be sick or heartsick or plotting escape. You make a mental note to watch them more closely. Illness spreads like fire in these quarters, and rebellion, though rare, is never impossible. The bread is nearly gone before you allow yourself a second piece. The part least covered in mold, the part that is hardest and least likely to be missed. You break it with your teeth, savoring the sharp sting against your gums. Hunger, you have learned, is an old friend. It teaches humility, resourcefulness, and above all, endurance. When the meal is finished, you gather the bowls, the spoons, the crumbs. Nothing is wasted. The scraps are saved for the pigs or for a hungry night. The girls wipe their hands on their skirts, eyes already shifting to the door, to the chores and the lessons that await. You let them go, one by one, watching the way their shoulders hunch against the cold, the way hope flares and dims in their eyes. You take a moment alone to lean back against the wall, feeling the rough stones press into your spine. You wonder, not for the first time, what it would be like to eat your fill, to taste honey, or soft cheese, or even a ripe apple. The thought is so absurd, it makes you smile, briefly, bitterly. You rise, brush the crumbs from your lap, and step into the corridor. Another day has begun, and breakfast, such as it is over. Hunger will be your companion for the next hours, just as it was the day before, and just as it will be tomorrow. The routine, the sameness, the grayness of it all, this is survival. This is the true taste of life for those like you, for those who teach, who serve, who endure. There is no true privacy in the castle, no place where words are truly safe. And so the education of young concubines must happen in the thin moments between duties, in the echoing corridors where every footfall is an omen and every whisper might be heard by ears that do not forgive. This is where you teach your lessons, not in light, but in shadow, not with laughter, but with warning. You gather the girls in the corridor outside their quarters, a place where the stones sweat in the damp and the torchlight flickers in and out, as though even the flames are unsure they wish to stay. Your words, as always, are measured and low, for you know that walls are never deaf, and secrets are the only currency more valuable than gold. The first lesson is always the same. Survival is built on silence and timing. You make the girls repeat the rules in unison, their voices barely above a whisper, the cadence drilled into them like the prayers they mutter at night. Speak when spoken to. Do not offer opinion. Watch the faces of your betters, for their moods are your weather. This is not the etiquette of courtly balls and embroidered gloves. This is the etiquette of staying alive, of staying invisible when the air is thick with danger. You tell them again and again that a misplaced glance is as deadly as a misplaced knife. You recall for them the story of the girl who laughed at the wrong moment, who was never seen again, her name now a silent warning in the eyes of the older women. You make them practice lowering their eyes, smoothing their faces, swallowing their pride. To survive, you explain, is to bend without breaking, to become the shadow, to let the world forget you are even there. Sometimes one of the bolder girls will ask you why. Why must we do this? Why must we hold our tongues? You answer as you always do, with a bitter smile and a shrug. Because those who notice us will want to change us, and change here is rarely kind. You let the words hang in the air, heavy as the scent of mildew and regret. The lessons are not at all spoken. Much must be learned by watching, by mimicking, by the endless repetition of routine. You demonstrate how to walk without making a sound, how to close a door so gently it seems never to have opened, how to tidy a room so that no one can say for certain who was there and when. Every movement is a calculation, every breath a wager. You do not teach the girls to trust, you teach them to endure. Decorum, you remind them, is not simply about being pleasing or pretty. It is about being forgettable when necessary and memorable when it is demanded. Never before. You drill them in the art of standing still, of bowing at precisely the right angle, of keeping hands folded and eyes demure. Even when you are terrified, you tell them, your face must not betray you. If you must cry, do it in the dark. If you must scream, do it where no one will ever hear. Your lessons often pause for the interruptions of the household, the sudden approach of the steward, the quick steps of a passing guard, the barked orders from the kitchens. Each interruption is a test, and you watch with a grim pride as the girls freeze, heads bowed, bodies tense but composed. You know what it cost them to learn this. You also teach the unspeakable lessons, the ones that cannot be said aloud, the language of a lowered gaze, the art of moving your body away from a grasp that lingers too long, the subtle signals sent between women in trouble, a flutter of fingers, a silent look, a deliberate stumble. You do not say these things, but the girls know. They learn to read each other, to protect one another as best they can in a world that is anything but kind. Sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, you allow yourself to remember another kind of teaching, a classroom, a warm fire, the sound of ink scratching across clean paper. You chase those memories away. They are useless here, just as useless as hope. At the end of each lesson, you lead the girls through the halls, your steps slow and measured, your eyes on every door, every shadow. You nod politely to those who outrank you, your own voice low, your words careful. You remind the girls to practice their smiles in the looking glass, smiles that mean nothing, reveal nothing, promise nothing. The only safe smile is the one that never reaches the eyes. You end the lesson as you always do, with a warning spoken so quietly it is nearly lost. Remember, the world here is not made for your comfort. It is made for your obedience. Learn to survive it, or it will swallow you whole. As you leave them, filing away into the maze of corridors and duties, you know you have given them little comfort, but perhaps you have given them a chance to last one more day, to endure a little longer, to become shadows in the halls of power. And in this place, that is the closest thing to safety you can offer. You might imagine that the education of a young concubine involves the study of poetry, the music of lutes, or the subtle art of the dance. You would be wrong. The curriculum here, as you have inherited and now enforce it, is infinitely more practical, less romantic, and far grimmer. You teach them how to mend, to make do, to patch, to save. In this world, nothing is ever truly new, least of all the things one wears upon her back. You usher the girls into the sewing room, if such a name can be given to the drafty alcove at the end of the servants' wing. The shelves sag with the tangle of threadbare tunics, fraying sashes, and a mountain of discarded rags that you stubbornly refuse to throw away. Every scrap, every button, every twisted knot of string is an asset, a potential solution to tomorrow's problem. The girls sit in a ring around you, each clutching a bundle of clothing that needs repair, hems torn by careless hands, sleeves frayed to ribbons by repeated scrubbing, seams splitting under the strain of another's grasp. Needles are treasures, and you keep your own hidden in the hem of your dress, wary of the day when even those small, sharp tools will be lost to theft or misfortune. You demonstrate first, showing them how to thread the needle by lamplight, how to knot the end of the string without wasting a precious inch, how to pass the point through fabric so thin it threatens to disintegrate at the touch. You work slowly, your fingers gnarled and rough, the tips calloused and sometimes bloody. The younger girls watch in silence, their hands trembling as they try to mimic your motions. Patience is not natural to them. They want to work quickly, to finish, to run back to the brief warmth of their beds or the feigned safety of the kitchens. You remind them, again and again, that haste leads to mistakes, and mistakes here are costly. A crooked stitch, a missed tear, a dropped needle, each is a potential disaster, a mark of failure, a sign that someone is not paying attention. You recall the first time you ever sewed under the watchful gaze of your own mistress long ago, how every mistake earned a slap across your knuckles, every knot a muttered curse. You do not strike the girls, though sometimes you wish you could scare them into caring more about the work. Instead, you speak with a quiet, tired firmness, repeating the lesson as often as necessary. The clothes themselves are not much to look at. Most are made from coarse linen, patched with wool, and dyed in the dullest colors available. The fabrics itch, chafe, and never seem to dry fully, leaving a faint, constant scent of mildew on the skin. When a dress or tunic is beyond repair, you salvage the buttons, the seams, the lengths of string that might one day become a makeshift lace or a patch for someone's elbow. Sometimes you have to improvise. Thread runs out more quickly than patience, and you have learned to use horsehair, unravel old seams for new thread, and even, On the most desperate days, braid long strands of your own hair into something that will hold a hem together for another week. The girls grimace at the thought, but they learn the lesson. Survival is never pretty. You teach them how to patch stockings with mismatched yarn, how to hide stains with strategically placed embroidery, how to make a torn bodice look deliberate with a row of haphazard stitches. You show them how to sew in silence, listening to the sounds of the household, alert for the footsteps of the steward or the raised voices of men in the halls. Sewing, you remind them, is not only an act of repair, but an act of listening, of vigilance. The older girls develop a kind of pride in their work, competing to see whose stitches are the straightest, whose patches the least obvious. You allow this, knowing that pride is one of the few comforts you can safely encourage. You remember how, as a girl, you embroidered a single red flower on the inside of your sleeve, a secret rebellion, a talisman. The memory makes you smile, though you would never admit it aloud. When the work is done, you inspect every garment, tugging at the seams, running your fingers along the hems. You hand back each item with a nod, or, on rare days, a word of praise. The girls straighten their shoulders, clutching their mended clothes, a little less ragged, a little more prepared to face the day. You save the most hopeless items for yourself. As night falls and the castle settles into uneasy quiet, you sit alone with your mending, the only light a flickering candle, and the faint hope that tomorrow's patchwork will last another day. You sew until your eyes blur and your fingers bleed, refusing to let despair become yet another hole in the fabric of your life. In this place, nothing is wasted. Every scrap is a story, every thread a lesson, every needle a weapon against cold, against hunger, against the unraveling that threatens to consume you all. You gather the leftover rags, the tangled knots of string, the broken buttons. You tuck them away for the next lesson, the next emergency, the next reminder that in the world of shadows, a well mended hem is sometimes the only armor a girl can hope for. You learn quickly, here, that illness is not an occasional visitor, but a permanent resident, a silent shadow that moves through the quarters as freely as the stale air. Sickness is not dramatic, not the stuff of weeping by candlelight or sudden tragic ends. It is much duller and more persistent, a cough that never leaves, a fever that comes and goes, a rash that spreads with the inevitability of spilled water. It is morning, and you are already dreading the day's tally. Before the lessons, before the chores, before even the meal, you inspect each girl. You look for the telltale signs: flushed cheeks, glassy eyes, shivering in the early cold, the subtle way some of them hold their bellies or scratch at their arms. You have become something of an expert in diagnosis, though your treatments are a poor substitute for a physician's care. The most common enemy is not plague, though the fear of it hangs over every cough. It is the steady parade of lice, fleas, and bedbugs, tiny tyrants that turn sleep into torment and dignity into a fading memory. Every week, you make the girls strip their bedding, beat it against the stones, and comb each other's hair with a carefulness that borders on ritual. The combs are carved from bone, the teeth always breaking. You show the girls how to crush the bugs between their nails, how to boil water with bitter herbs to make a rinse that will sting their scalps, but sometimes drive the creatures away. The castle is never truly clean. The air itself seems to carry disease, a mixture of damp and rot, of human waste and kitchen smoke, of too many bodies crammed into too little space. You open the windows when you can, but mostly you hope for a strong wind to blow the miasma somewhere else. You burn dried sage when you can steal it from the kitchen, but it is as likely to hide the smell as to cure anything. In the worst seasons, when the rats grow bold and the water grows foul, you see the same sickness pass from bed to bed. It starts with a headache, then a flush, then days of vomiting and fever. You have seen girls waste away to nothing in a matter of weeks, while others recover as suddenly as they fell ill. You do what you can: cool rags for fever, weak broth for strength, whispered prayers in the dark. Sometimes you do not sleep at all, sitting by the sick bed, counting the slow, uneven breaths, waiting for the moment when you know she will live or know she will not. You ration the soap as if it were gold, hiding slivers in a locked box, using only what you must to scrub at wounds and wash hands after caring for the sick. You teach the girls to wash their hands, their faces, their feet, but water is always in short supply, and cleanliness is often a losing battle. You cannot afford to waste anything: not water, not energy, not hope. There are darker sicknesses too, the kind no one dares name aloud. You see the way some girls shrink away from certain men, the way their eyes go flat and their mouths turn down at the corners. You know what has happened, though you are powerless to stop it. You do what little you can: comfort, quiet, distraction, a stolen moment of laughter to break the monotony of fear. For the sores and bruises, you use herbs gathered from the weed choked garden: plantain for scrapes, yarrow for bleeding, a bitter paste made from onion and honey for infected cuts. You have learned all you know from other women, from the whispers passed down through generations, from trial and error, from desperation. Sometimes your efforts are enough, sometimes they are not. When disease truly takes hold, when the cough turns bloody, when the fever burns for days without breaking, you send word to the steward, knowing it may mean the removal of a bed, the quiet shuffling of feet in the night, the cleaning of a mattress before dawn. The girls whisper about what happens to those who do not recover, but you never answer their questions. You do not know, and perhaps it is better that way. You keep a tally in your mind: who was healthy yesterday, who grows weaker today, who will not see the end of the month. You have learned not to grow too attached, not to hope too hard. Every girl who survives is a small victory. Everyone who does not is a weight you must carry. Some days you dream of a place where air is clean, where sickness is rare, where the smallest wound does not threaten death. But those dreams fade with the dawn, chased away by the scratch of lice and the scent of sickness in the stale morning air. You wake, you care, You clean, you patch, you pray. Illness is your constant companion, your oldest enemy, your truest teacher. In this place, you do not expect to win the war, only to last another day, another week, another winter. You gather your basket of herbs and combs, your scraps of soap and threadbare cloths. You call the girls to you, one by one, checking for fever, for sores, for the unmistakable sour scent of sickness. And as you do, you murmur the same weary promise you always do, not to them, but to yourself. Not today, not if you can help it, not if there is still one more thing you can try. Fear is the most reliable tool you possess. Not love, not loyalty, and certainly not hope. Those are luxuries reserved for other places, other kinds of women. Here, fear is the thread that binds, the shield that protects, and the lesson that never needs repeating. It is the only sure inheritance you can give to the girls under your care. You gather them in the storeroom, where the stones seep with ancient damp, and the air carries the scent of onions, old tallow, and a whiff of something far less pleasant. There are no windows here, only a single lantern swaying from a rusty hook, throwing shadows that dance on the walls. You choose this place for a reason. Fear grows strongest in the dark. They settle on crates and sacks, their eyes wide and silent. Even the boldest of them sits with hands clasped in her lap, knuckles whitening. You have taught them already that here, in this corner of the world, it is better to be quiet than to be noticed, better to appear invisible than to invite the attention of anyone with power. You begin, as always, with a story. Not a fairy tale, not a tale of heroes or magic. Your stories are cautionary, sharp as broken glass, etched into memory by repetition and necessity. You tell them of the girl who spoke out of turn, who dared to laugh when a lord's son stumbled in the courtyard. She was called away that night, and none have seen her since. The girls know you do not invent these tales. There is always a grain of truth, a name half whispered, a memory that makes the youngest shiver. You speak, too, of the woman who tried to run, who crept out past the kitchens in the dead of night, feet wrapped in rags to muffle her steps. She was found at dawn, shivering, the dogs howling. Her punishment was never spoken aloud, but the lesson remains, carved into every footstep that dares echo too loudly after sunset. These stories are not threats, they are warnings. You speak with a tone as flat and measured as the stone floor, never raising your voice, never letting emotion crack the careful mask you wear. You are not cruel, you remind yourself, merely honest. The world is cruel enough for everyone. Then come the rules, recited like prayer. Never meet the eye of a man with a sword. Never speak unless your name is called. Never, ever trust a promise given in the dark. You make each girl repeat them, one by one. Some do so in trembling voices, others with forced bravado. All learn, sooner or later. There are more practical lessons as well. You teach them how to sense danger, how to read the shifting moods of the household, how to disappear into the background when tempers flare, how to listen at doors without being seen. You remind them to keep their secrets close, to share only what is safe, and never more than necessary. You explain that even a kind word can turn to poison if overheard by the wrong person. The older girls, the survivors of past seasons, sometimes help you. They repeat your warnings with the authority of those who have learned the cost of carelessness. You see the youngest watching them, wide eyed, trying to imagine what could have changed these girls from frightened children to silent, watchful shadows. You do not spare yourself from the lesson. You speak, without embellishment, of the dangers that come even to a mistress, to women who know too much or not enough, to those who refuse or accept or simply exist at the wrong time. You tell them that you too are afraid every day, that fear is not weakness, but armor, and that the only way to survive is to put it on and wear it well. Sometimes, late at night, you wish you could teach them something gentler. You wish you could give them laughter instead of lessons, dreams instead of warnings. But you know what such softness brings in this world: disappointment, ruin, and grief. You have no illusions left about what is possible here. The lesson ends with a ritual. Each girl is to name one thing she fears and one way she will keep herself safe. Some whisper of the rats in the cellars or the creak of floorboards at midnight. Others are braver, naming the steward, the guards, the endless gnawing hunger. You nod to each in turn, listening without judgment, storing the answers away for the day when you might need to help them hide or run or simply endure. You dismiss them with a final, quiet reminder: fear is the only teacher you must never ignore. They file out, silent and small, shadows among shadows, and you are left in the storeroom with only the flicker of the lantern and your own uneasy heartbeat. You know they will remember your words long after the details of sewing and etiquette have faded. You know that in this place it is fear, sharpened, rehearsed, and carefully managed, that keeps them alive. And for another day, that will have to be enough. In the dim world behind the castle walls, the idea of education seems almost laughable. Yet you know, and must explain to the girls, that knowledge is a double edged sword, sometimes a privilege, sometimes a punishment, and always a risk. No one here is truly free, but those who can read and write are doubly watched, doubly suspected. In this place, cleverness can be as dangerous as beauty. The lesson begins not with letters, but with rules. Only a select few, those the master has noticed for their charm, their meekness, their particular brand of prettiness, are permitted to learn their letters. Even then, it is never for their own sake. It is so they can read notes, recite poems, or understand instructions when summoned. Books are not for pleasure, they are for show, for service, for the amusement of those who hold power. You gather the chosen girls around a battered table, its surface scored with knife marks and old stains. You set before them the tools of your clandestine classroom: a piece of chalk, a slate, a handful of paper scraps scavenged from the kitchen waste. The girls watch you with a mixture of longing and dread. Some hunger for the secrets hidden in written words. Others shrink from them as if knowledge itself might draw the evil eye. You teach them the alphabet first, tracing letters in the dust, repeating each one until the room is thick with their uncertain voices. A is for apple, you say, though no apple has graced these halls in years. B is for bread, which they know all too well in its stony, moldy forms. The lessons are simple, the rewards smaller still. A broken smile, a rare word of praise, the promise of something more than endless chores. But even as you teach, you warn. The ability to read is not something to flaunt. If the wrong person hears a girl recite a line of scripture or copy a line from a letter, questions will be asked. Who taught her? Why? What else does she know? More than once, a lesson is interrupted by a sharp knock at the door, a voice inquiring too closely. You learn to keep a rag handy, ready to erase all traces of writing in an instant. Writing, when you teach it, is a furtive affair. The quill is a stick of charred wood, the ink a mixture of soot and water, the parchment a square torn from the wrapping of a merchant's cheese. The girls practice their letters with awkward, cramped hands, struggling to keep the lines straight, their names a secret prayer scratched into the margin. There are dangers here you cannot protect them from. You remember the story of the girl who wrote a letter to her mother, a letter that fell into the wrong hands. The punishment was swift, public, and final. You recount this tale with little embellishment. The lesson is in the facts, and the facts alone are enough to chill the blood. Still, there are moments of hope, of pride. You see a girl's eyes light up as she reads her first word, as if she has unlocked a forbidden door. For a brief moment, she believes knowledge will save her. You do not disabuse her of this notion, not yet. Hope, after all, is its own kind of currency, and you are too tired to take it from her so soon. Not every girl learns the same way. Some are quick, memorizing lines by rote, their minds sharp and eager. Others are slower, weighed down by hunger, fear, or simple lack of talent. You hide your frustration and encourage them all. Failure here is punished enough by the world outside these walls. You do not add to it. When the master or one of his men asks for a recitation, you coach the girls in the art of sounding clever, but never cleverer than their betters. Recite, but not too well. Read, but never question. Memorize what is given, but never seek more. You shape their words as you would their stitches, neat, unobtrusive, quickly hidden if danger draws near. There are days when your lessons are interrupted by more pressing matters, a sudden illness, an unexpected visitor, a fight in the courtyard. On these days, you hide the writing materials in a hollow behind the loose stone, wipe the chalk from your hands, and become just another weary woman attending to the endless demands of life in the castle. Sometimes, after the girls are asleep, you sneak a scrap of parchment for yourself. You copy an old poem, a prayer, a line from a story half remembered from your own distant childhood. The act itself feels rebellious, even sacred. You hide the scrap under your mattress, knowing it could be the end of you if ever found. You wish you could tell the girls that knowledge is power, that learning will set them free. But you are not a liar, Not in this, at least. Here, knowledge is only another danger to be survived. You teach them because it is your duty, because someone must, because you still believe in the smallest, most stubborn part of your heart that words can make the world less cruel, if only for a moment. At the end of each lesson, you gather the scraps, brush away the dust, and send the girls back to their chores. You watch them go, some eager, some afraid, all changed by what they have learned. In this place, learning is both privilege and punishment, gift and curse. And in every lesson you give is one more secret to keep, one more reason to fear the night. Night does not fall gently here. It crawls, heavy and damp, up the walls and through the cracks in the floor, until all that is left is the shivering of bodies and the slow flicker of half spent candles. You do not choose to believe that the coming of darkness brings peace. You know better. For you and your girls, evening is only another chapter in a long day of fear, vigilance, and ritual. As the sun drops below the horizon, you gather the girls for prayers. Not because you expect miracles or even forgiveness. Those belong to stories, not to people like you, but because ritual is a shield and routine is the closest thing to comfort most of you will ever know. The chapel is little more than a cold, stone alcove with an iron cross nailed crooked above the hearth and a scattering of broken rushes on the floor. It smells of mildew, wax, and old sorrow. The girls file in, shoulders hunched, hands clasped tightly. Some cross themselves with the practiced motions of those who still hope. Others merely go through the motions, lips moving over prayers learned by rote, but long since emptied of meaning. You lead them, voice flat and low, reciting the familiar lines, promises of mercy, pleas for deliverance, confessions you could make in your sleep. Deliver us from evil, you say, knowing that evil is never far. Forgive us our trespasses. You think of the day's small sins, an extra scrap of bread, a sharp word, the temptation to hope for escape. You do not speak these aloud. Some secrets even the chapel cannot bear. The kneeling is the worst part. The stones are always cold, and their uneven surfaces dig into knees already bruised by work and worry. You see the girls shifting, wincing, but none dare complain. You remember a time when you too would try to find a softer place to rest your weight. Now you have learned to embrace the discomfort, to let it ground you in the reality of your life. Pain is proof that you are still here, still fighting, still human. Tonight, one of the younger girls begins to cry. Soft, broken sounds that seem too small to matter, but somehow fill the space. You rest a hand on her shoulder, a silent comfort. The others do not look, do not judge. They have all been there, each with their own silent grief, their own prayers that go unanswered. You lead them in the final psalm, voice steady even as your mind wanders. You remember your mother's voice, singing the same verses in a place that felt safe, in a world that now seems as distant as the stars. You wonder what she would think if she saw you now, teacher, guardian, prisoner, warden of other people's daughters. The prayers end. but the ritual continues. You have the girls bow their heads, reciting the list of names: those who are gone, those who are sick, those who are in special need of mercy tonight. The list grows longer with each passing month, a litany of absence, a roll call of grief. You speak each name with care, as if by remembering you can somehow keep them close. You know it is not true, but still, you try. There are some nights, rare, and only in the deep of winter, when the chaplain visits. He brings with him the smell of wine and smoke, his sermons as cold and empty as the chapel itself. The girls listen with downcast eyes, nodding when expected, crossing themselves at the right moments. You have learned to count the words until the end, to measure the distance between benediction and dismissal. Sometimes he leaves a loaf of stale bread or a half burned candle. More often, he simply leaves. When the prayers are finished, you shepherd the girls back to their quarters. Their steps are slow, each girl wrapped in her own thoughts. You notice who lingers by the altar, who casts a last desperate glance at the cross, who simply walks away. Some seek solace, some seek escape, and some have learned that in this place, prayer is only another chore to be survived. You remain behind for just a moment to straighten the rushes, to snuff the candles, to whisper your own prayer, a prayer not for salvation, but for the strength to endure, for the wisdom to protect those who can be saved, for the mercy to forgive yourself when you fail. You know the gods, if they listen at all, have no time for women like you. Still, the ritual matters. It binds the day together, gives shape to the shapeless dark. Back in your own corner, you see the girls settling in for the night, their faces pale in the glow of a single lamp. Some huddle together, sharing warmth and whispered words. Others stare at the ceiling, eyes wide, haunted by dreams they will not share. You do not tell them that morning will be better. You do not make promises you cannot keep. You lie down on your pallet, knees throbbing, back sore, head filled with the hum of prayers and regrets. You close your eyes, listening to the girls' breathing, to the distant sounds of the castle at night, the drip of water, the scurry of rats, the echo of laughter far out of reach. Tomorrow will bring the same rituals, the same prayers, the same unyielding darkness, and you will lead them through it, because that is all you can do. You wake each morning to the battle you never truly win. Cleanliness here is less a matter of pride than of survival, a contest waged against mud, sweat, vermin, and the simple fact of too many bodies pressed into too small a space. You remind yourself, as you have reminded the girls, that to be clean is to be less vulnerable. Dirt invites disease, draws unwanted attention, marks you as careless or, worse, expendable. The ritual of washing is a daily exercise in improvisation. The well water, when you can get it, is cold and brackish. There is never enough to go around. In the early light, you haul buckets from the courtyard, arms aching, boots slipping on the damp stones. The girls line up, faces pale, eyes wary, clutching their rags. Each takes a turn splashing water over her hands and face, scrubbing as best she can. Some mornings, the water freezes to their skin. Other days, it is thick with mud or the memory of last week's rat. Soap is more precious than gold. You dole it out in slivers, each piece kept in a locked tin. The best is reserved for the girls most likely to be inspected, those chosen to serve in the upper halls or at the Lord's table. For the rest, there is lye soap made in the kitchens, harsh enough to strip skin from bone. You instruct them to wash well, but not to linger. Too much time at the basin draws suspicion, suggests vanity, or invites accusations of waste. The clothing, always mended and rarely truly clean, is soaked in cauldrons when you can spare the fuel. You add handfuls of crushed herbs and ashes to cut the grease and cover the stink. The youngest girls are tasked with pounding the garments against stones at the stream, their hands red and raw, fingers stiff with cold. Each item is inspected, each stain cataloged and explained. Blood is the hardest to wash away. You teach the girls to hide such marks with clever folds, careful stitching, a patch sewn just so. Hair is another battlefield. Lice and fleas move swiftly from head to head. You line the girls up, comb in hand, and work through their hair strand by strand. The combs are bone or wood, the teeth broken and sharp. You pour vinegar through their hair, astringent and stinging, and watch the vermin float to the surface. Some girls weep at the pain, others grit their teeth and endure. You remind them, as gently as you can, that the pain is nothing compared to what comes if they are found infested by the steward or his wife. Nails must be trimmed, teeth scrubbed with rags and salt when you can afford it. Mouths rot quickly here, and the sweet, sick smell of decay follows the girls like a curse. There is no cure for most ailments, only a dull ache that becomes part of the background of every day. You tell the girls to chew parsley if they can steal it from the kitchen, to rinse their mouths with wine when a bottle is left unattended. These small tricks are learned from older women, passed down like heirlooms, never spoken of outside your circle. Once a week, if the weather and the mood of the household allow, you oversee the ritual of full washing. The bathhouse is a stone room at the far end of the yard, barely warmer than the outside air, the water heated in battered pots and poured into a wooden tub. You scrub the girls' backs, check for sores and bruises, note who shivers and who sweats, who flinches when touched. These inspections are both kindness and necessity. You praise the girls who endure the cold, who scrape the dirt from their feet and hands. You chastise the careless, knowing that a dirty girl is a liability for everyone. Sometimes, during these moments, you remember a time when a bath was a pleasure. You recall the scent of lavender, the luxury of soaking until your skin wrinkled, the laughter of sisters. Those memories feel like someone else's life, lost forever beneath layers of grime and duty. Now, the pleasure of cleanliness is fleeting, a passing moment before the mud and the misery return. You clean yourself last. By then, the water is lukewarm, cloudy with dirt and soap, but you do not complain. You have learned that self sacrifice is expected, that a mistress must always put her girls before herself, that your own comfort is the least of anyone's concern. At the end of each day, you inspect the quarters, sweeping the floors, emptying the slop buckets, chasing out rats when you can. You burn old rushes to mask the worst smells, sprinkle vinegar on the doorposts to ward off sickness. You know it is not enough. The castle itself seems to sweat filth, and the effort to keep it at bay is endless. The girls collapse onto their pallets, exhausted, sometimes cleaner than they were, never truly clean. You whisper the same words as always: do your best, survive another day, tomorrow we try again. It is not hope, not really, but it is what you have. As you lie down, the dirt already creeping back under your fingernails, you remind yourself that here, in this gray and hungry world, even the smallest victory against the filth is worth the struggle. You sleep with the scent of soap on your skin, knowing it will be gone by morning. If there is one thing that spreads faster than disease in the castle, it is rumor. Whispers slither through the corridors and under doors, winding their way from kitchen to chapel, from servant to mistress. Here, knowledge is not so much power as it is peril. A single word, carelessly spoken, can ruin a life or save one, depending entirely on who is listening and who is meant to overhear. You know better than most how dangerous talk can be. You have learned to listen while appearing deaf, to weigh every syllable before it leaves your lips, to teach the girls that silence is the safest form of self preservation. But the younger ones, oh, they struggle. They want to gossip, to speculate, to share their fears and small victories, their moments of hope and their many disappointments. You must teach them otherwise for their own sake. The lesson begins with an accident. One girl, new and naive, repeats something she heard in the kitchens, an offhand remark about a guard's temper, a lord's wandering hands, a piece of bread taken from the wrong shelf. Within an hour, you are summoned to the steward's quarters, where the air is thick with the scent of tallow and rage. You bow your head, accept the reprimand, and promise it will not happen again. Then you gather your girls and, behind closed doors, you remind them of the rule: what is spoken between these four walls does not leave them, ever. You explain, not for the first time, that words are watched as closely as hands. The castle is filled with ears, maids who report to the mistress of the house, guards eager for favor, even the boys who tend the fires and empty the chamber pots. All have reason to listen, to remember, to pass on what they hear. You make the girls practice speaking in riddles, in half truths, in words that cannot be twisted and used against them. Some of the older girls have mastered the art of rumor as self defense. They deflect questions with laughter, offer only what is already known, and ask questions in return to redirect suspicion. You encourage this skill, though you warn them that too much cleverness can be as dangerous as none at all. The line between survival and destruction is razor thin. There are times when you yourself are asked to whisper into the right ear. The steward, or the lady of the house, might seek your counsel on the temperament of a new servant, or the loyalty of a troublesome girl? You answer carefully, knowing that the fate of someone in your care may hang on the turn of a phrase. Too harsh, and you risk her exile. Too kind, and you mark her as a favorite, a target for envy, or worse. You think often of the stories that never leave these walls, the secret liaisons, the thefts and small betrayals, the heartbreaks and hopes. Some you keep to yourself, locked away as tightly as the rarest piece of soap. Others you share, but only with those you trust, and even then, only in the deepest hours of night, when the castle seems to hold its breath and the girls huddle close for warmth and comfort. The girls learn quickly. They learn that to ask too many questions is to draw suspicion, that to know too much is a risk, but to know nothing is a danger all its own. They trade news as they trade scraps of bread, always careful, always weighing the risk. You watch them grow sharper, quieter, their laughter more measured, their glances more guarded. And yet, rumor has a life of its own. No matter how careful you are, there is always someone listening, always a word that slips through the cracks. You live in constant fear of the moment when something said in jest or anger finds its way to the wrong person. You know the punishment for gossip can be swift and severe, a beating, a banishment, sometimes worse. You remind the girls of those who have disappeared, whose names are no longer spoken, whose absence lingers in the air like the echo of an unanswered prayer. Still, you cannot help but see the need for connection, the way girls cling to one another, whispering secrets and stories in the dark. You do not try to stamp it out completely. The loneliness here is suffocating, and a shared secret, even a dangerous one, is sometimes the only comfort there is. Sometimes you wonder what rumors are whispered about you. You imagine the stories, the stern mistress with the sharp tongue, the one who knows too much, the one who has survived longer than most. You do not correct them. In a place like this, mystery is another kind of armor. At the end of each day, you sit alone and listen to the distant hum of voices beyond your door. You pick out words, inflections, the rise and fall of hope and fear. You gather what you learn, storing it away for the time when it might help you protect a girl or yourself. Information is never wasted. Even in a place where words are weapons, you understand that sometimes it is the silence between them that keeps you alive. And so you teach your girls to speak softly, to listen always, and to remember that in this world, a secret kept is a life saved, at least for another day. Some things are not meant to be spoken, and some are not meant to be known. You tell the girls this often, sometimes as a warning, sometimes as a comfort, and sometimes because you need to remind yourself. Here, in these damp and echoing halls, secrets are as common as fleas and twice as dangerous. Forbidden knowledge is the currency of the desperate, the weapon of the clever, and the ruin of the careless. You carry more secrets than you can count. Some are old, left to you by the woman who trained you and the woman before her. Others are new, passed in whispers from one trembling mouth to another, the name of a trusted guard, the real parentage of a child, the hidden compartment behind a loose stone in the wall. Most are trivial, small deceptions, hidden love letters, the location of a forbidden tryst. Some are terrible, confessions made in the dark, the truth behind a girl's sudden disappearance, the real reason a physician comes so often to the kitchen at night. Your days are a careful dance around these truths. You learn early that the more you know, the less you should say. The girls are quick to understand that some questions are never answered and some answers are never trusted. You teach them how to listen without reacting, how to carry a secret without letting it shape their faces or break their sleep. There are lessons in forbidden knowledge, too. You teach them the art of eavesdropping, how to press an ear to a door without casting a shadow, how to catch the meaning behind words not meant for them. You explain that knowing too much is dangerous, but knowing nothing is worse. The art is in the balance to hear, but not repeat, to understand, but never reveal what you know. Once you caught a girl reading from a book hidden under her mattress, a text in a language she did not understand, left behind by a traveling merchant. You did not scold her, but you did make her promise to burn it before nightfall. Books are rare here, and doubly so those not approved by the house steward. You would like to think knowledge could free her, but you know better. Words can bind as surely as chains. You yourself hold on to a few forbidden things. A poem scratched into a piece of wood, a prayer stitched in red thread into your hem, a song you hum under your breath that no one else here remembers. These are your treasures, small and secret, proof that you are not entirely what this place has made of you. The girls, for their part, are always searching for more. They want to know what happens in the upper rooms, who sleeps in which bed, where the kitchen maid goes at night, why certain girls are summoned and others are left behind. You caution them against curiosity for its own sake. In this world, questions are knives that cut both ways. Every so often, you must manage a crisis, a secret revealed, a letter found, a girl accused of knowing too much. These moments are dangerous, and you have learned to act quickly. Sometimes you must hide evidence. Sometimes you must invent a lie. Sometimes you must quietly plead with someone higher in the household to look the other way. Every time you gamble your own safety for theirs. You have seen what happens to those caught with forbidden knowledge. Once, years ago, you watched as a girl was taken away for speaking of things she should not have known, a lord's business, a hidden debt, a plan for a journey that was never to be spoken aloud. She did not return. The story changed in the telling, but you remember the truth. You share just enough of her fate with the others to keep them cautious, but not so much as to break their spirits. There are secret signs, too, passed from hand to hand, marks scratched on a wall, a flower drawn in dust, a ribbon tied in a certain knot. These are warnings, invitations, coded messages that mean safety or danger. You make sure the girls learn these signs, even as you pretend not to see them yourself. It is a language for those who have no voice. And then there are the secrets you cannot bear, the confessions whispered to you in tears, a promise broken, a trust betrayed, a child lost before it was ever known. You carry these as quietly as you can, letting the pain of them sharpen your patience, your resolve. In the darkest nights, you wonder if you will ever be free of them, or if they will cling to you until the end. Still, secrets are sometimes a kind of hope. They are proof that there is something left to protect, something worth saving from the greedy eyes of the world. You see this in the girls, in the way they huddle together, trading scraps of forbidden knowledge, daring to trust each other just a little. You do not try to stop them. In a place where so much has been taken, a secret shared is a small act of defiance, a quiet assertion of self. You teach them all you can, that some things are better left unsaid, that knowledge is a burden best carried lightly, that to survive is sometimes to forget. Yet you also teach them with a look, with a touch, with the gentlest word, that they are not alone, that even here in the house of secrets, there are those who will bear them with you. And at night, when all is quiet and the girls are asleep, you count your own secrets and you promise yourself again that they will die with you and not with any of them. You might imagine that festivals are a time of joy, a break from routine, a pause in suffering, a chance for laughter and release. That is what the songs say, what the stories from long ago promise. The harvest feast, the midwinter revel, the summer fair with ribbons and cakes. But you know better, and so do the girls. In this place, festivals are not occasions for happiness. They are days when the dangers change their shape but never disappear. You begin preparing your charges days in advance. The air in the castle is thick with anticipation, but beneath it, you sense a tremor of fear. There are floors to be scrubbed until they shine, walls to be hung with greens, windows to be rubbed free of months old grime. The girl's clothing is inspected, patched, pressed flat beneath heavy stones to look new, at least from a distance. For most, it is the only day in the year when their hair will be dressed with real ribbons and their faces cleaned with a stolen drop of rose water. You tell them each year what to expect. During a festival, the house is full. Lords, knights, priests, merchants, strangers with sharp eyes and sharper hands. The rules are stricter, not looser. Voices must be softer, eyes cast down, every movement measured. Laughter is permitted, but only in the right place, at the right volume, in response to the right man's joke. There is nothing more dangerous than a girl who draws too much attention or too little. On festival days, the smells in the kitchen change. The usual gruel is replaced by heavy stews, by meats roasted over open fires, by pastries and pies that make the mouth water and the heart ache. For a moment, the girls are allowed to taste these wonders: a scrap of pie, a gnawed bone, the dregs of spiced wine from a lord's forgotten cup. For a few bites, they remember what it is to be children, to dream of sweetness, to believe that life could offer more than survival. But the cost of these small joys is high. With every guest comes the risk of notice. You warn the girls not to smile too freely, not to linger where wine flows thick, not to answer questions with more than a word. You remember, all too clearly, the festival nights when a girl was chosen, called away to serve wine or sing a song, to sit at a guest's knee, to dance a little too close to the fire. Some return, silent and shaken. Some do not return at all. As dusk falls, the music starts. Drums and pipes echo in the yard. The guests grow louder, the laughter harsher. Shadows leap and sway in the firelight. You station yourself at the edge of the hall, eyes moving from girl to girl, watching for the warning signs. The trembling lip, the forced smile, the glance that seeks you out across the crowd. There is always a moment when the celebration tips from uneasy merriment to danger. A lord's son, red-faced with wine, leans too close. A merchant's hand lingers on a shoulder. A priest whispers promises that are not his to give. You teach the girls to excuse themselves politely, to retreat to the safety of the kitchens, to hide behind chores and the crowd when necessary. You pray, not for joy, but for survival. The feasting goes late into the night. The girls clean and serve, eyes raw from smoke, feet aching from hours on the flagstones. At the end, they sweep up spilled wine and broken bread, gather the ribbons trampled into mud, and return to their quarters, more tired than ever. There are no gifts for them, no extra food to be set aside. Their festival is over the moment the last guest leaves. You comfort those who need it. You sit with the ones who cry, who tremble, who cannot sleep for the memory of rough hands or cruel laughter. You tell them what your own mistress once told you, that this too will pass, that tomorrow will be another day, that they are not to blame for the attention they attract or the harm that follows. The words are thin, but they are all you have. The next day, the castle returns to its usual grayness. The greens are wilted, the candles burned down to stubs, the sweet smell of pastries replaced by the stink of stale beer and spilled tallow. The girls return to their chores, faces blank, voices low. You inventory the bruises, the missing ribbons, the girls who are quieter than before. You make a note of everything: who limped, who hid her tears, who avoided your gaze. You have learned to dread the festivals more than the ordinary days. You have seen how celebration can strip away the thin protections of routine and order, can turn the eyes of strangers and masters alike into something hungry, predatory. There is a lesson here, and you repeat it often. In this place, joy is a mask, and safety is never guaranteed. Still, you let the girls keep their ribbons, their scraps of pie, their stolen moments of sweetness. You know that even a fleeting pleasure is worth clinging to, even in a world where happiness is rationed as tightly as bread or soap. At night, you gather the girls close, and for a brief moment, you allow yourself to believe in the promise of the next festival, that perhaps next time the danger will pass them by. But you know better, and so you prepare, always, for the next celebration, the next ordeal, the next day when survival will depend not on luck, but on the lessons you have drilled into them all. Be quiet, be careful, and never forget that in this place, every gift has its price. You might expect that a house filled with lords and banquets would overflow with plenty. The truth is far duller and more grim. The kitchens are always busy, but the best food rarely finds its way to your table or the girls. Most days, your relationship with food is one of negotiation, strategy, and resignation. Hunger shapes your every thought, as it does for all those who live at the bottom of the castle's pecking order. Today, like every day, you survey what remains in your corner of the pantry. It is a dreary inventory, a heel of bread so hard it could break teeth, a handful of dried beans, a cabbage leaf with more holes than green, a skin of thin broth with floating specks that might once have been meat. You ration each item with the care of a miser and the calculation of a merchant. The girls watch you, hope and disappointment flickering across their faces. You send the youngest girls to the kitchens to beg for scraps. This is a delicate task. The cooks are overworked and possessive, doling out favors and leftovers in exchange for news, flattery, or the smallest service. You coach the girls to keep their voices sweet and their eyes wide, to accept a slap as quickly as a crumb, to never complain about what they are given. Sometimes they return with nothing. Sometimes with a bruised apple, a lump of gristle, a pinch of salt. The older girls are charged with foraging for wild greens in the weedy corners of the yard or behind the pig pens. You teach them how to tell edible plants from those that will make them sicker than hunger. The lessons are learned quickly. One wrong mouthful, and the body protests for days. On good afternoons, they return with nettles, wild garlic, or dandelion leaves. These are washed and thrown into the pot with whatever else you can find, stretching thin soup into a semblance of a meal. You yourself visit the pantry each evening, eyes alert for anything overlooked by the more privileged. You know every hidden nook, the forgotten jar of pickles behind the vinegar barrel, the wrinkled carrot in the bottom of a basket, the cracked egg hidden among the straw. You take what you can without being noticed, careful to leave no sign. A missing morsel means questions, and questions are a luxury you cannot afford. There is no such thing as waste here. Stale bread is soaked and boiled, transformed into a gluey gruel. Potato peels are fried if there is enough fat, chewed raw if not. Bones are boiled and reboiled until they surrender every ounce of marrow, then ground into dust for soup. You teach the girls to gnaw every morsel, to eat the skin and the fat, to savor even the taste of bitterness, because it means the food is real. Festive leftovers are a rare bounty. After a banquet, you send the girls to hover by the door, to gather crusts from the Lord's table, to accept half eaten apples and broken pies as if they were treasures. On such days, you allow a rare treat. Each girl may eat until she is full, or as full as she dares. The joy is always tempered by the knowledge that tomorrow will be lean again. Sometimes you barter for food, a scrap of ribbon, a mended shirt, a whispered rumor. These are all currencies in the small economy of the castle's lower world. You weigh every trade, teaching the girls to count the cost. A favor owed is often dearer than a handful of beans. There are days when you find yourself counting the hours until the next meal, even though you know it will be as unsatisfying as the last. Hunger is a constant companion, a gnawing ache that shapes your moods, your patience, your very sense of self. You watch the girls for signs of real hunger, the sallow skin, the trembling hands, the way they hide food in their pockets for later, just in case. You scold gently, knowing they cannot help it. You once did the same. You remember the stories from your childhood, tales of harvests so bountiful the tables sagged beneath the weight of bread and cheese, of honey and fruit, of roasted meat and creamy milk. You wonder if they were ever true or if they are just another lie meant to comfort hungry children at bedtime. Illness comes quickly to the malnourished. You keep a close eye on every girl, watching for the hollow cheeks and dull eyes that signal trouble. You stir herbs into the broth when you can, though most do little more than flavor the water. You dream, sometimes, of the taste of a fresh apple, of a lump of real cheese, of a meal that fills the belly and stays the hunger for more than an hour. Yet you find pride in your management. You have learned to feed many with little, to stretch a handful of scraps into a meal, to make a celebration out of a stolen onion. The girls come to you with their secret treasures, a piece of fruit, a stolen nut, a crust saved from a generous kitchen maid, and you divide it with careful fairness, knowing it is never enough, but that it is all you have. You remind the girls that hunger is not shameful, that to survive is a victory, that even a meager meal is worth gratitude. Still, at night, you hear the quiet sighs, the rumble of empty stomachs, the whispered dreams of feasts and plenty. You share their longing even as you teach them endurance. In the end, food is not only sustenance, but discipline, community, and hope. It is a lesson in gratitude, in patience, in the stubbornness needed to face another day in a world where every scrap must be earned and nothing is ever given freely. You do not waste time teaching the girls to expect kindness. Instead, you teach them to recognize violence as an ordinary part of their world, a storm that passes through the corridors as predictably as the evening chill. Violence here does not always come with shouting or the flash of steel. Sometimes it is as simple and quiet as a slap, a shove, a look that means trouble is coming and there is nothing to be done but survive it. You begin, as always, with warnings. Do not draw attention. Do not speak unless spoken to. If you see anger in a man's eyes, be still. If you hear shouting in the hall, do not open the door. These are not rules for obedience, but strategies for survival, passed down from one generation to the next, their edges worn smooth by repetition and necessity. There are days when the castle is restless, when the Lord's temper is short, and the wine flows too freely. On such days, even the shadows seem to shrink from the danger. You can keep the girls close, counting heads at every hour, checking faces for bruises, for fear, for the glassy look that means someone has learned a new lesson about the limits of her safety. You wish you could promise protection, but you cannot. Not truly, not here, not against men who consider themselves kings in their own small kingdom. Violence takes many forms. The threat of it hangs in the air, heavy, silent, inescapable. It might come as a thrown cup at the midday meal, or a sudden yank of hair for some imagined slight. It might be the steward's stick tapping out a rhythm on the backs of hands, or the sharp edge of a mistress's words cutting deeper than any knife. Sometimes the worst violence is what does not leave a mark, the threat, the insult, the humiliation endured in silence. You do what you can to minimize it. You teach the girls to move quietly, to avoid the corners where men gather in the evenings, to keep their laughter soft, their eyes on the floor. You show them how to shrink their bodies, how to disappear into the background, how to become so ordinary that no one will bother to remember them. It is a skill as vital as sewing or prayer. There are times, though, when nothing helps. A man in a foul mood, a visiting noble with a taste for cruelty, a bored guard with too much drink, these cannot always be avoided. When it happens, you are the first to comfort, to clean the wounds, to hush the tears. You do not ask what happened. You do not need to. The stories are always the same, always old, always new. You keep a store of healing salves and bruisewort hidden in a tin under your cot. You teach the older girls how to brew teas that dull pain, how to press a cold cloth to a swelling eye, how to hide marks with powder and patience. Some injuries are easy to conceal, others are not. You become skilled in inventing stories. She tripped on the stairs. The pot was too heavy. She burned herself on the oven. You know these lies are transparent, but no one in the upper halls cares to look too closely. Sometimes the violence is not physical. Words can do as much harm as fists. A sharp insult, a sneer, a careless order shouted in front of the others. These leave wounds that last longer than bruises. You see it in the way a girl grows quieter, in the way she turns away from comfort, in the way hope dims in her eyes. You cannot always fix this, but you try. You remind them, gently, that the cruelty of others is not a measure of their own worth. You have learned to read the signs of danger, the sudden hush that falls when a man enters the room, the way girls edge away from certain doorways, the quick glances exchanged when the air grows tense. You teach the girls to trust these instincts, to hide when hiding is possible, to run when running is the only choice. You do not tell them that sometimes nothing will save them. They already know. There are, of course, those who use their small power to shield as well as harm. A kindly kitchen boy who warns you when the steward is angry. A laundress who hides a frightened girl among the linens. A guard who turns his back rather than report a minor infraction. You teach the girls to recognize these rare allies, but also to be wary. Kindness here is sometimes the prelude to another kind of demand, another kind of threat. You carry your own scars. Some are visible, some not. The girls do not ask about them, but sometimes, late at night, you see them looking. You show them, when it is safe, that you have survived. So can they. You remind them that endurance is its own kind of defiance, that survival is a victory, even when it is all you can claim. At the end of each day, you count the girls again, your heart tight until every head is accounted for. You whisper your own prayers, not for justice, which you know will not come, but for strength, for luck, for another quiet day. You patch wounds, you soothe, you promise as much safety as you can give. And when the violence comes, as it always does, you remind the girls that it is not their fault, that it is not forever, that they are more than the sum of the harm done to them. You do not always believe it yourself, but you say it anyway, because in this place, sometimes the only power left is to survive. You learn very early that nothing in the castle happens without someone noticing. Eyes are everywhere. The lords, the stewards, the mistresses, the guards, even the walls seem to listen, stones cold and wet with secrets. You tell the girls that the only privacy here is what they can steal in the silence between footsteps, the breathless moment between dusk and dawn. Surveillance is as constant as hunger. You are watched as you work, as you eat, as you pray. The girls are watched when they bathe, when they mend, when they so much as whisper in the shadows of the stairwell. Sometimes you wonder if the castle was designed for this, for the perpetual gaze, the endless accounting, the relentless pressure of being seen. Your life becomes a series of routines, each action measured and expected, each movement traced by the eyes of someone with the power to punish or reward. You are responsible for the girls, and so you count them every night, a silent roll call in the gloom of the sleeping quarters. 1, 2, 3, all the way to the last frightened, tired face. Any missing is your burden, your failure, your punishment. There are no locked doors for you or for them. The only locked doors are for those above, those who need their secrets kept. For everyone else, the world is open, exposed. Curtains are thin, beds are crowded, and you have learned to speak in code, to teach the girls to guard their words as carefully as their lives. Even sleep is not private. You learn to wake at the smallest sound, the creak of a floorboard, the hiss of a match in the dark. The girls learn to hide in plain sight. You show them how to be present without drawing notice, to keep their voices soft, their gestures small. There are games, rituals, checking the reflection in a cup of water to see who stands behind, whispering warnings in the guise of lullabies, inventing errands to stay together when a stranger enters the room. You are watched by the other women too. Some judge, some pity, some envy the small authority you possess. You must be cautious with them. One careless word from you, one show of favoritism, and the rumors begin. Sometimes you must discipline a girl more harshly than you wish, not for her sake, but because you know others are watching. Fairness is a luxury, and appearances are everything. It is not only the girls who are monitored, you are too. Your every action is subject to scrutiny, your words weighed, your loyalty questioned, your failures tallied by the house mistress and her deputies. You are expected to report on the girls, who is obedient, who is troublesome, who might be hiding something. Each report is a test. Too honest, and you risk harming someone. Too gentle, and you look incompetent or disloyal. You walk a thin, dizzying line every day. Sometimes you are forced to search the girl's things, pallets of straw, pockets in threadbare dresses, the folds of an old blanket. You hate these inspections, but you do them carefully, methodically, with as much dignity as you can muster. You tell yourself it is for their safety. Perhaps that is even true sometimes. At night, the castle is never still. The guards make their rounds, boots echoing in the stone corridors, torches flaring against the dark. Doors open without warning, shadows cross your threshold. You sleep lightly, always listening, always ready to wake and answer for yourself or for a frightened girl. You have learned the names and footsteps of every man who passes your door. You know which ones to fear, which ones to avoid, which ones to bribe if things go wrong. There are no secrets from the eyes that matter most. You teach the girls to live with this, to move through the world as if unseen while knowing they are always observed. It is a strange, exhausting skill, this art of being invisible while under constant scrutiny. Sometimes you catch a girl trying to carve out a small space for herself, a curtain drawn, a stone turned, a secret meeting in the quiet of the dawn. You do not always stop her. You remember what it is to need a moment alone, a breath not borrowed from someone else's life. But you remind her, afterward, what happens to those who are caught hiding, those who forget the rules of the watching world. When a girl goes missing, or simply lingers too long outside the circle, you are the one who must answer. You search, heart pounding, through corridors and courtyards, knowing that each moment lost is another mark against you. If she returns, you do not ask questions in front of others, but in private you demand the truth. You are both warden and mother, always walking the line between protection and surveillance. In your rare moments alone, you let yourself remember what it felt like to be unwatched, to walk outside at dawn, to close a door behind you and trust that no one would follow. That memory is a luxury now, as distant as a dream of spring. Every evening, you count the girls once more, listening for the soft sounds of sleep, the hush of fear, the silence that comes with exhaustion. You remind yourself that vigilance is love in this place, a hard, ugly, necessary love that keeps them and you alive for one more day. And in the darkness, as the castle settles and the last footsteps fade, you let your guard down just long enough to wish for a world where watching is not the only way to survive. Every day in the castle is a lesson, and you are the teacher who must prepare the girls not only for the gaze of others, but for the challenge of survival itself. You quickly learn that to keep your girls safe, you must teach them skills that go far beyond what anyone might expect of concubines. Some days, it feels as if you are training spies, not servants. Sewing and mending are the basics, of course, but you drill these into them as if each stitch is a weapon, every hem a shield. A dropped button can mean exposure. A ripped seam can become an excuse for punishment. You show the girls how to work quickly and quietly, to repair in darkness, to knot a thread with one hand if the other is shaking. It is not pride you teach, but vigilance. Every garment must be checked, every tear mended before anyone else notices. But you teach more than this. There is the making of candles from kitchen fat, careful to avoid being caught stealing from the pots. You explain how to twist a rag and dip it in leftover tallow, how to save every scrap of wick. Candlelight is not just a comfort in the night, it is an advantage, a rare chance to work, to read, to watch without being watched. You teach them the value of coins, how to hide a copper in the hem of a dress, how to fold a silver into the binding of a book, how to keep a secret stash that even you do not know about. You warn them not to trust you, not completely, not anyone. In a world ruled by favors and debts, a hidden coin is sometimes the only difference between misery and survival. There are lessons in listening, how to read lips in a noisy kitchen, how to catch a whispered conversation from across the room, how to notice who carries a key and who leaves doors unlocked. You demonstrate how to remember faces, to keep track of who is kind and who is cruel, who owes a favor and who is always ready to call in a debt. You show them how to make things last. A comb repaired with twine, a spoon fashioned from bone, a scarf woven from the threads of three unraveling tunics. When something breaks, you ask, how can we use it now? And make them answer. Resourcefulness is not a gift, but a requirement. To waste is a kind of betrayal of yourself and everyone who depends on you. Sometimes you teach them how to write, not just their own names, but coded messages. A pattern of knots in a string, a mark hidden under a table, a flower drawn in dust that means be careful. The older girls help you invent new ways to send warnings, to arrange secret meetings, to protect each other. You do not call it rebellion, but it is quiet, careful, and necessary. There are practical skills too, how to make a poultice from mashed herbs, how to clean a wound without fresh water, how to slip away unseen when tempers flare. You show them how to hide valuables in plain sight, how to braid a piece of twine into their hair, how to disguise a bruise as a shadow or a patch as decoration. Some lessons are darker. You teach the girls what to say when someone with power makes a demand they cannot refuse, how to endure and survive, how to keep a piece of themselves untouched by the harm. You tell them that silence is sometimes the only safety, but also that there is strength in solidarity. Never leave another girl behind. Never let her face punishment alone if you can help it. You give them strategies for dealing with the steward and the mistress. Which words soothe, which gestures show respect, which silences mean, I will not say more. You rehearse apologies and excuses until they come naturally, even under threat. You remind them that sometimes the most important skill is to let others believe they have won. Sometimes you share a trick learned long ago, how to make a small lock pick from a hairpin, how to find the loose floorboard where a desperate girl might hide a letter, how to signal to you if something is very wrong. You do not ask them to be brave, but you ask them to be smart. It is not all grim. There are small victories when a girl manages to keep a favorite scarf safe all winter, when she barters a scrap of soap for a needle, when she tells a lie so skillfully that even you believe her for a moment. You praise these moments quietly, knowing that pride must be rationed as carefully as food. At night, as you sit by the fire, you remind the girls that every skill learned is a shield against the world. You tell them softly, No one here will protect you but yourself and each other. You watch them nod, eyes bright with a hard, cautious hope. You know these lessons will not save everyone, but you also know that every clever trick, every act of quiet rebellion, is a thread in the tapestry of survival that holds your small world together. And so you teach again and again, knowing that in a place built on obedience and fear, the greatest skill you can pass on is the refusal to be utterly broken. No matter how careful you are, no matter how closely you count the girls at night, and how many warnings you repeat, the day always comes when one of them is lost. It does not happen with drama or ceremony. There is no wailing, no grand outcry. Loss here is a silent, suffocating thing, an absence more powerful than any presence. You wake in the middle of the night to the familiar feeling that something is wrong. Perhaps it is the stillness, too deep even for sleep, or the quiet sighs of those who sense what has happened before you say a word. The empty pallet stares up at you, a space where a girl should be, where a body, warm or cold, always lay. It is not the first time you have seen this, and you know it will not be the last. The others know before you speak. They watch your face as you move through the room, your steps quiet, your eyes searching for hope where there is none. No one asks what happened. Questions are dangerous, and the answers are always the same. A girl is gone, and she is not coming back. There are many ways to lose someone here. Sometimes it is illness, swift or slow, a fever that burns out a life in a handful of days, a cough that grows deeper until it silences itself forever. Sometimes it is punishment, and the absence is as final as it is unexplained. Sometimes it is simply the whim of someone with more power, someone who decides that this girl will serve elsewhere or will not serve at all. You have your rituals. You gather the girls in a circle, closing the space around the missing one, as if together you can fill the void she has left behind. You do not cry, not in front of them. Instead, you ask the others to remember something kind, a song, a joke, a small act of defiance or care. The memories come slowly at first, words fragile and broken, but soon the stories spill out, and for a few minutes the girl is almost present, her absence less sharp, her memory alive in the voices of those who remain. You comfort the youngest, whose eyes are wide and frightened. You hold them, if they let you, whispering what small comforts you can, that it is not their fault, that loss is not punishment for failure, that loving someone in this place is an act of courage, not a mistake. You have said these words before, and you will say them again. Sometimes you believe them. Later, you deal with the practicalities. The empty pallet must be stripped, the blanket folded, the belongings sorted. You do this yourself, quietly, hands steady even when your heart shakes. If there are letters or keepsakes, you hide them away. If there is nothing, you smooth the sheets and make the bed as if for a new girl, because there is always another girl, another name, another life to protect until it, too, is lost. There is a kind of cruelty in how quickly the household moves on. The steward shrugs. The mistress frowns and counts the laundry for one fewer. No one above notices the change. The work continues, the chores are reassigned, and soon the missing girl is little more than a name on your list and a memory you dare not share outside your circle. You wonder sometimes if it is better to forget, to turn your heart to stone and let the losses pass over you, uncounted and unmourned, but you cannot. You remember every face, every voice, every girl who once looked at you with trust or hope or even fear. You carry them with you, a silent roll call that grows longer with every season. Sometimes at night, you cry for them, not loudly, not with drama, but quietly, your face pressed into your thin pillow, your body curled around the ache. You grieve in silence because grief is dangerous here, an indulgence, a weakness, a thing that can get you or the others hurt. Still, you cannot let go of it. You know that if you do, you will become something less than human. The girls watch you for signs of strength, of collapse, of how to behave. You do your best to show them that it is possible to keep going, that survival does not mean forgetting, that remembrance is its own kind of defiance. You lead them through the day with the same routines, the same lessons, the same cautious hope, but there is a new heaviness in the air. The laughter is quieter, the songs more subdued, the smiles slower to come. The girls cling to one another in the darkness, hands searching for comfort, for proof that they are still here, that they are not next. You wish you could promise them safety, but you do not. You promise only that you will do everything you can, that you will remember, that you will not let their stories disappear with them. It is a small thing, but it is all you have. In the quiet after the loss, you look out the small window, past the walls, to the night beyond. You count the stars, the same as you count the girls, the same as you count the days until the next loss. You whisper their names to the darkness, a prayer that is half memory, half defiance. And in the morning, you rise, gather the girls, and begin again, because that is what you do and what you must teach them to do. Loss is a certainty here, but so is endurance, and for as long as you remain, you will teach them both. Hope in this place is a rare and dangerous thing. It sneaks in through cracks, carried on the wind in a whispered story, or, on the luckiest days, in the crumpled, smudged form of a letter from the outside world. These are the treasures that cost dearly, and you have become expert in the art of hope management, nurturing just enough to keep the girls alive, but not so much that it blinds them to the harshness of reality. Letters arrive rarely, sometimes carried by a sympathetic kitchen boy, sometimes slipped in with deliveries, and sometimes smuggled by a traveling merchant willing to risk a beating for a copper coin. You always intercept them first, not out of cruelty, but necessity. You scan each letter for danger, coded messages, forbidden words, hints of escape or rebellion. Most are harmless, filled with the aching ordinariness of life outside. News of harvests, marriages, deaths, babies born, and old men buried. For many girls, reading these letters is a torment, as much as a blessing. The ink is often smudged, the handwriting hard to decipher, the words carrying the weight of another world that no longer fits them. You read aloud when you must, careful to soften any cruel news, to gloss over the kind of information that might awaken longing for things forever out of reach. Your brother is well, you might say, even if the truth is otherwise. They remember you, even if the letter is unsigned. The bravest among the girls try to write back. This is the most delicate of tasks. Paper is precious, scraps begged from the kitchens, torn from the backs of ledgers, corners of discarded announcements. Ink is a luxury. Sometimes you use soot mixed with water, a chicken feather for a pen. The words are always measured, as if each one might be weighed by a suspicious steward. You instruct the girls to write of health, of gratitude, of the unchanging routine, never of the loneliness or the fear. You teach them to hide their longing between the lines, where only a mother or a sister might see it. Not every letter ever reaches its destination. You must choose carefully whom to trust. Sometimes the merchant never returns. Sometimes a kitchen maid loses her nerve. Sometimes the letter is intercepted, and you must weather the punishment. Questions, searches, the threat of worse. You tell the girls that letters are a risk, but they are also proof of life. A risk you continue to take because the alternative, total silence, is too cruel. The girls gather around when news arrives. Even those who claim not to care listen closely, hoping for a scrap of news, a familiar name, a promise that the world outside still exists. The lucky ones weep quietly at the mention of a mother's love, a father's pride, a child's memory. The unlucky ones close their eyes and say nothing, knowing that their names will not appear in any letter, that they are already forgotten. You see how the letters change them, if only for a little while. There is more laughter, a quicker step, a momentary brightness in the eyes. You let them savor these moments. You encourage them to share stories, to remember where they came from, to believe, if only for a night, that someone waits for them somewhere beyond the stone walls. You also see the pain these letters bring. For every scrap of joy, there is a reminder of what has been lost, the fields left behind, the home that will not welcome them back, the sibling who now belongs to someone else. Sometimes the girls retreat after the reading, curling into themselves, refusing food, staring into the fire as if they can see another world through the flames. You sit with them, saying nothing. You know words cannot bridge that distance. Every so often, a letter brings danger instead of comfort. News of a rebellion in a distant village, the mention of a name that is no longer safe, a request for help or for money that cannot be sent. You destroy these letters without regret. You have learned that mercy here is sometimes a matter of survival for all. The written word is powerful, more powerful than a knife, more lasting than a wound. You know this, and so you guard the girl's letters with your life, hiding them in the lining of your mattress, beneath loose stones, in the hollow of a broken beam. When times are darkest, you bring them out again and read them aloud, reminders that the world is larger than this place, that their stories did not begin here and do not have to end here. You have never received a letter of your own, not in all your years. You tell yourself you do not care, but in the long hours before dawn, you imagine what it would say if there were someone to write, someone to remember you as more than a shadow in the background of other people's lives. Still, you help the girls write their letters, and you help them dream because you know that even the smallest hope is a kind of rebellion. You encourage them to keep believing that somewhere, beyond these stone walls, a world waits that is less cruel, less confining, more their own. And at night, when the candles burn low and the last letter has been hidden away, you allow yourself a rare smile because you have given them not just the means to survive, but the memory of something better. And that, in this place, is the closest thing to freedom you can offer. Night is not a gentle thing in this place. It falls slowly, seeping into every corner of stone and straw, settling over you and your girls like an extra blanket, heavy, scratchy, woven from old fears and exhaustion. There is no end to the day's worries. They only shift shape in the dark, becoming shadows at the foot of each bed, soft murmurs under every breath. You move through the room in near silence, checking the sleeping forms, listening for coughs, for stifled sobs, for the restless shifting of bodies not yet at peace. You count the girls again, though you know by now the number is correct. Your ritual is the same every night. It is not superstition, it is habit, hard earned and necessary. You have learned that hope does not protect anyone here, but attention, vigilance, and routine sometimes do. The castle is quieter now. The noise of the feast, the chores, the sharp voices of masters and mistresses, these have all faded, replaced by the distant groan of settling beams, the drip of water from the roof, the quiet scurry of rats in the walls. Somewhere, the guards laugh over dice. Somewhere, someone weeps alone. It is a comfort, in a way, that these sounds repeat each night. In sameness, there is a certain safety. You settle onto your own palate, aching in every joint, eyes gritty, mind still circling through a litany of tasks unfinished and fears unspoken. You remind yourself, again and again, that tomorrow will be another day like this one, a day of care and loss and endless, bone deep tiredness. You tell yourself, as you do each night, that what you do matters, even if only for these few girls. You are not their savior, not even their protector, not truly. You are the stone against which their small flames can burn just a little longer. Some nights, one of the girls will wake and come to you in the darkness, seeking comfort for a nightmare, a fever, a question she cannot voice by daylight. You always listen, even when you have no answers. Sometimes a hand to hold, a whisper of reassurance is all you can offer. Sometimes it is enough. Sometimes it must be. You lie awake longer than you mean to, staring at the low ceiling, at the outline of the moon through the narrow window. Your thoughts drift, rarely to dreams, mostly to memories, and sometimes, against your own will, to small wishes. You do not wish for rescue, not anymore. You do not even wish for change. You wish for endurance, for the strength to go on, to keep counting, to keep teaching, to keep being the fixed point in a world that never stops shifting. The girls sleep in their uneasy way. They twitch, murmur, occasionally laugh or cry out, haunted by dreams that reflect the same world they wake to each morning. You listen for trouble, always half awake. You have learned that nothing good happens in the darkness here. Accidents and dangers love the hours between midnight and dawn. The door is always shut, but never truly secure. You are always ready to rise, to soothe, to intervene. You think of the days ahead, so many identical, so many indistinguishable, the same battles over water, over food, over scraps of hope and dignity, the same warnings, the same lessons, the same balancing act between strictness and care. You know that even if the faces change, the work remains the same. You will lose some girls, gain others. You will teach and sew and scold, and sometimes, rarely, you will laugh. You do not believe that life will ever change for women like you or for the girls you guide. You do not dream of escape, but you know that what you do is not nothing. Each day survived is a small defiance, a quiet act of resistance against the world that would rather see you broken or forgotten. You count victories not in joy, but in endurance. Another meal, another bandaged wound, another girl kept safe for just one more night. Before sleep finally drags you down, you allow yourself a single hope that tomorrow none will be missing, that tomorrow there will be enough water, a little extra bread, no fever or bruises or missing faces. You know better than to expect it, but still you hope. Even in this place, where hope is thin and dreams are dangerous, it is impossible not to wish for something softer, kinder, better. You drift at last into sleep, as always, with one ear open, your mind alert to every sound and silence. You are the watcher, the keeper of girls, the custodian of secrets and of sorrow. You wait, as you always do, for the next day, knowing it will be as gray and heavy as the last, knowing you will meet it as you have met all the others. Tired, careful, and unbroken, in the endless night of the castle, this is the only victory you can claim, and it is enough.